because it is so challenging. Speaking of which, right, we also saw an announcement from Mistral that they raised another 600 million euro to go, to continue the development of what they're doing, and it sort of, solidifies this point that this is hard stuff. It's expensive, particularly for those that are building at the foundational model piece. And it makes it tough. So, I mean, what was your take on this? I mean, did you take anything more about I'm almost a little surprised about we're still putting this much money into these companies at this stage.
Yeah, but honestly, the compute requires that. We're talking about 10 billion, 50 billion, 100 billion parameter models. And when you're talking about actually doing an LLM, you have to think about how those cross multiply from a matrix perspective, all the permutations associated with those parameters. And even if you don't have a degree in math, you can just imagine that a billion times a billion times a billion starts becoming a really big number when you have to put these things together. So you have to pay for all that compute to figure out all of those combinations from a testing perspective to get to these better models. And a lot of these tests won't work. So you have to pour just crazy amounts of money. But on the bright side, I feel like this is at least more productive than Bitcoin mining.
Well, I mean, it's a lot. I mean, obviously it's expensive, and there's clearly a need for the big LLMs. What I'm struggling with from just a broad market perspective is we have OpenAI, we have Anthropic, we have X's Grok, we have Grok, whatever it's called. We have Facebook's or Meta's, I forgot what theirs is called
Llama,
now.
yeah.
Yeah, Llama. We have, so we already have these four, and I think I'm missing one.
We have
Um,
Cohere, which raised its own 240 million a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
so the question to me is, I'm a big believer that we're going to have a handful of these big LLMs that are sort of the foundational models, but the real future of this is in the small language models and the more practical application of this technology
Mhm.
in very targeted use cases. So I'm not saying that Mistral is not a good investment. I think we're going to see a shakeout in the big LLMs because it's just not a sustainable amount of money. And what it really speaks to is how expensive this is to not only develop, but then to operate. And that's really the issue why I think the LLMs themselves are going to, we're going to have some challenges with this because going back to what we just talked about, when you talk about operationalizing it, then that cost of inference becomes super, super critical. I can't deploy this if my cost per transaction is too high. And so that's where, I believe that either the small language models or other approaches that maybe aren't even based on this are going to start becoming more prominent because we've got to get the cost down. And so I saw this announcement and it was sort of like the juxtaposition. And I think we're going to end up with both, but I just don't think we're going to be able to support this many LLMs. And so I think that's going to end up shaking out.
Yeah, it's so tempting in tech to always think bigger is better, more is better. And right now, part of the reasons people are spending literally billions of dollars on these new models is because they feel like they have to throw 30, 50, 100 billion new words and tokens into the new model and figure out billions of new parameters. But I think there has to be a limit to how big something can be because there's only so many ways we can put together the English language or colors or whatever. There's a mathematical limit, and there's going to be a push to be more efficient. So you